Hi, this is Todd Olthoff from toddolthoff.com coming back at you with another screencast. And this week we're going to take a look at doing a clean install of the entire operating system and then installing Mac Server on top of that. Now, there are times when no matter what you try, a clean install is probably the best way to go. If you've had issues with your DNS or you've had issues with Open Directory, different things like that, because of the DNS, sometimes it's just better to start over because a lot of those files and things lurk in the system and you can't seem to get past it. And so rather than bang your head against the wall, sometimes a clean install is the best way to go. So what I'm going to do is show you how to do a clean install so that you've got an idea of how to make that work. So the first thing you're going to want to do is go into the Mac App Store and download the operating system, in this case macOS High Sierra. And so you want to have a copy of that on your desktop. Now I've already done that. You can see it says open right here. So I'm just going to pop this down. But what I want to show you is I want to show you that when you go to your applications folder, you'll see the install disk images right here. What I would do is before you do anything else is just copy these somewhere. In the future, if you ever wanted to downgrade or you've got older Macs or whatever, Apple in the App Store tends to get rid of the previous operating system, and you may want it to build a disk image with net install or all kinds of different things. And so it's important that you save these so that you don't lose them, so you've got them again so you can use them in the future. I'd recommend the same thing with the actual server application itself, is just, with different upgrades and stuff and updates, save the older version just so you've got a copy just in case. Because there are situations where you may want to downgrade or you want to use an older machine. So I would recommend doing both of those things. So once you have those things set and ready to go, one more thing that you might want to do is you might want to make a bootable clone of your drive just in case you want to go back and start over. And so one of the applications that I recommend for that is an application called SuperDuper. And so let me just take you in here. SuperDuper is a cloning application, and so what it'll do is it will make a clone, an exact copy of your hard drive, so that you can then go and boot from that if you need to and just restore from it, and it puts everything back the way it is. And I would do this anyway with your server just to make sure that you've always got a bootable clone just in case you need to roll back or something like that. So anyways, I would make sure that you take a look at that. Now, once we have that all set and ready to go, you've got your bootable clone, you've gone through everything, you're fine with erasing the computer, what we're going to do is create a bootable USB stick that allows us to install the operating system so that we can then erase the entire hard drive and then install a fresh copy and we'll start brand new. Now, to do that, the first thing you want to do is go to a website called diskmakerx.com. And DiskmakerX is an application that takes your install image, for in this case High Sierra, and creates a bootable USB stick out of it that you can then just plug right into your server, boot from that, erase the drive, and install the operating system. And so you want to go ahead and download this. I know right now it says Sierra compatible, but it's also High Sierra compatible with version 7. And so 7 is the one that you want to make sure that you have downloaded. And so I've already done that as well, so I've got that in here. So let me just go ahead and close this off right here. I'm going to close this and okay, so now that I've got that closed, I'm going to go ahead and put this down. We're going to want to now go into Disk Utility, and so I'm going to pull up Disk Utility, and I'm going to want to take this USB drive and make it ready for the install disk. So what we're going to do is we're going to just come in here to Erase, and I can call this whatever I want, and I'm just going to call this one Install, let's say macOS. It's not going to matter. It's going to end up erasing it anyway. And you can see there's a bunch of different things you can do. You can put APFS if you want, but in this case, we're just going to leave it at extended journaled, and we're just going to say erase. And so we're just going to erase it, and you can see it's going through the process of doing that for us. If you ever want to watch the details of what it's doing, you can just put this down and see what it's done. And you can see that now it's erased it. And we say done, and so now I've got a clean volume on which I can now create this install disk. Okay, so now let's go ahead and launch Disk Maker. You can see I've got it there in my applications. Let me just double click on it here. And we're going to go ahead and open it anyway. And we're going to allow it access. And you can see it says I found a copy of the installer in this folder. right? The applications folder. Do you want to use this copy? Now you can use another copy if you've got it stored somewhere else, but in our case, this is what we want. So we're going to say use this copy. And so it's going to ask, what kind of disk do I want to create? And it says, again, if I only have an 8 gigabyte USB thumb drive, it's going to be completely erased, or I can choose another volume. So if I wanted to partition this particular USB stick, I could do that and install it on one partition. If I did that, I'd say another kind of disk and do it that way. In this case, I'm just going to erase the whole thing. So I'm just going to say I have an 8 gigabyte USB thumb drive and just let it erase the entire thumb drive. But again, you can partition it if you want to. So I'm going to go ahead and say this. And I'm just going to put this down here. And it says, here are the disks that you may want to use to create it. Okay, so you want to choose the actual disk. You can see you have this one or this one. And I want to choose my install macOS. It's showing this because the disk image is still up, but this is the one I want to choose. So I'm going to say choose this disk. And so again, it says again, the whole content of this drive is going to be erased. So it's going to actually erase this install macOS. Now, if you ever wanted to check, you just come down here to the Finder, and in the sidebar, just check to make sure that that is the drive that's attached and that's the one you want to use, which we have. And so I'm just going to say erase, then create the disk. And so the next step, it's going to build administrator privileges so that it can do the install. We're going to say continue, and it's going to do its thing. And it's going to kind of do it in the background, so you're not going to see a lot of stuff happening right away. Eventually, you'll see some things pop up on the screen, but again, if you don't see anything right away, you can see now stuff's popping up. Just wait, it will come up. So now it's going to ask me to authenticate, so let me just go ahead and do that. Okay, so here we are. It's finished its process. It took about, I don't know, 3-4 minutes, something like that. And you can see it says that your boot disk is ready. To use it, you just reboot your Mac and you press the Option key or Alt key, and you select this as the startup disk in your disk preferences when it comes up. And so again, we can say open startup disk preferences, which would mean that we would be setting this up. So let's go ahead and just do that. We're going to open the setup process. You can see this is where the install is. It even has a nice background and everything, so they do a really nice job with it. And so now we can choose what to use as the startup disk. All I have to do is click this and authenticate, so let me do that. Okay, once I've authenticated, I can say unlock, and you can see now I have the option to choose to actually select this and boot from this install disk that we've got. So once I do that, I'll hit restart, and it's going to boot me into that process. So let me just go ahead and hit that, and I'm probably going to lose the screen here because I am doing a screen share desktop here. So we'll go ahead and say restart. And it's going to restart my Mac. Okay, so here we are in the launch screen here, and you can see we've got the Mac utilities come up first. Again, you'll need to have some kind of external display to see this if you, again, are using a screen share, because you've got to be able to see the screen because it's booting off of an external drive. That's what the thumb drive is. And you need a mouse as well. So here we are. First thing we're going to do is erase the disk. So we're going to go to Disk Utility, and I'm just going to say Continue. And it's going to take us into the disk utility screen here. And on this screen, what we're going to do is we're going to erase our server hard drive. We're going to leave it the same, but we just want to erase all the contents on it. So we're just going to come up here to erase. And so it's going to say, hey, you sure you want to erase that? You know, we can make it macOS Extended Journaled. That's what we're going to do in this case. We're just going to set it up that way and install High Sierra. We're not going to set it up as APFS because they haven't really released that yet for Fusion drives or spinning hard drives. If you've got an SSD that you're installing this on, then it will automatically do the APFS file system, but in this case we're not going to do that. So I'm just going to go ahead and say erase. And so now it's going to erase the drive. And you can see it's unmounting it, and if we wanted to watch the progress, we could click this down here and watch the progress just like we did with the USB drive. So I'm going to let it go ahead and do its thing right now. And when it's finished, we'll take a look and see what it looks like. Okay, so it looks like the operation was successful. It erased the disk, so I'm just going to say done. And we'll just come back in here again to my Fusion drive, and you can see that nothing is used, so everything is free. So we are set and ready to go. So now we can close Disk Utility, so I'm going to go ahead and just close that. It puts us right back here. And then we can choose to install macOS. I'm just going to click on that and say continue. And so now it's going to go through the process of loading the install from my image there. And it may take a minute. There we go. So we're going to install High Sierra. Let me just go ahead and move that down here just a little bit so we can see it a little better. So now all I do is I want to click on Continue. And so now it's going to ask me to agree to the terms and conditions, which I'm going to go ahead and do. And I'm just going to click on Agree. And so now it asks me to choose the volume to install it on. So we're going to go ahead and say the server hard drive again that we have set up. And we're just going to click on Install. And so now it's going to go through the process of gathering what it needs to do the install. And you can see it takes about 4 minutes, 3 minutes remaining to load all of this. And it's just pulling information to make the install happen. So I'm going to go ahead and let it do that. And when it's done, we'll come back and see what it looks like. Okay, so here we are on the welcome screen. So we're going to go ahead and just select United States and our US keyboard style. And then we can either choose to transfer stuff from another Mac or not. We're just going to say no. We're not going to transfer any information. Here's where you would sign in with your Apple ID. I'm just going to say don't sign in for right now. Go to the next screen. We're just going to say skip that part. And so it's going to take us to the next screen. We've got to agree to the terms and conditions, agree twice, and then we've got to put in a computer name account. So let me go ahead and put that information in, and then we'll come right back. Okay, so now that I've got my information in there, I'm just going to go ahead and say continue. And so it's going to create the account for me. You can see that it's working on it right here to create the account. And so once that's done, we'll let that run. Should take us to the next screen. And so we've got Express Setup, where we can allow this information to be set up. If I wanted to customize the settings, I could do that. It's just going to leave location services and diagnostics on. That's fine. I'm just going to say continue. And so now it's going to set up my Mac for the first time and should launch me into the desktop here. And there's the desktop. So what I'm going to do is just switch over to my main Mac and we'll finish the screencast. Okay, so here we are back on the desktop, and as you can see, everything is installed and ready to go. And so that's how you do a clean install of the operating system. So now everything's been wiped out and we're starting fresh. Now the next thing we'll want to do is go ahead and download the server application. And so if you just go into the Mac App Store here, you can download macOS Server. Again, like I said earlier, you might want to go in here to the Finder and just go over to your applications once you've downloaded this. Let me just put it like this. And just make a copy of that server application just so you've got it for future in case you want to revert back. It's just something to do to keep it there just in case you need it. Okay, so now that we've done that, we've installed the server, I'm going to go ahead and just click on Open, and we're just going to close this down. And so here we have the server application come up. And so all we need to do now is just click on Continue, and we'll go through the install. We're going to go ahead and use Apple services to determine the server's reachability. We're going to say agree to the terms. We're going to have to authenticate, so let me do that. And once I've typed that in, I just say allow. And so then it's going to start the process of installing server. And you can see now it's getting host names, and it's starting to go through the process of all the installation stuff here, creating a certificate, creating identity certificate. And what's nice is you can kind of see what it's doing down here as it's installing each of these different services. You can see it kind of flip through the different service things that it's installing and getting set up and preparing. And again, it could take a little bit of time, just depends. Some it'll stop on a little longer, like here it's stopping on Profile Manager. But once it's done, it should launch us right into the application. So I'm going to go ahead and let this run, and then we'll take a look at what it looks like to get started and launch us into the app. And so there we are. We can see that the application's launched, and here we are in the actual server application. Everything installed and ready to go with a fresh setup of macOS Server. And I'll be going through and walking you through the setup so that you've got all the different details that you need to set up your own server. But for those of you that wanted to do a clean install and get started all over again with server, that's how you do it. And the great thing is none of my old DNS information was picked up. It's only got the local host name that I was given by the computer itself. And so I can start fresh now and set it up however I want. So that's all I have for this week. I'll be back at you next week with another screencast to help you learn how to do more things with your Mac. If you're interested in help in setting up your own server, feel free to contact me at todd@toddolthoff.com.